Hey everyone, Brian here from Vintage Classic Specialist. Happy Wednesday, everyone. It is time for another episode of Day in the Life of Vintage Classic Specialist. So before I forget, because surely I will, I want to thank our longtime viewer, Stu from Arizona, for stopping by the shop. He came by on his enormous BMW motorcycle. He rode out from Arizona. I think he had some kind of family function or something. Correct me if I'm wrong, Stu, out this side of the country here. And anyway, yeah, so he was in the neighborhood and stopped by this morning. So great to see him, meet him in person. If you're a regular around here, you've probably seen him commenting a lot on the channel. Super nice guy. Anyway, thank you, Stu, for stopping by. Always a pleasure to meet one of you guys. Okay, now that I got that out of the way, because I definitely would have forgot if I tried to do that at the end. So let's talk about what actually happened around here today, other than Stu coming for a visit. So, Mr. Rafa kept his momentum going, as I always like to say. He only works 3 days a week, so it kind of makes sense to have him come in and focus 3 days, generally speaking, on like one project and really kind of dig into it and get stuff done. So yeah, this week he did focus on this car pretty much all week and got quite a bit done. And we do have a big parts list that I meant to order today. Kind of forgot. I'll probably order that tomorrow. But yeah, this one's starting to come together. As you guys always hear me say, though, Ghias are extremely complicated and a bit persnickety to work on sometimes, and so it takes a lot longer to put a Ghia together than it does a Beetle. I think Rafa or I could put a Beetle together with our eyes closed. Ghias, not so much. Eyes are definitely open, and they can be a struggle. But guys, look at the curves on these cars. I mean, come on. Gorgeous, right? So yeah, worth the trouble, but they ain't easy. Anyway, so let's see what Rafa did today. So he went ahead and routed the brake hoses from the reservoir down to the ginormous aftermarket cylinder. So this is a 25 millimeter master cylinder here, just enormous, to supply these big 4-piston Willwoods up front and pretty big Willwoods out back. And so yeah, huge master cylinder. And normally these come with the reservoir that just plugs on the top. God, I hate those things, guys, because the problem is the owner, they can't really easily check or keep an eye on their brake fluid. And of course, not that we expect there to be brake fluid leaks or anything, but I don't know. I like being able to see my brake fluid reservoir. And the ones that generally come with MP and Air-Cooled Vintage Works and everyone else are the ones that just plug in there. And then you can't see it literally unless you pull this wheel and tire off and look at it from the side. But because this car is a little bit later one, it does have the larger hoses between the reservoir and the master cylinder itself. And so we thought, let's just go ahead and use the stock reservoir and just run the lines down. And so normally these have some metal lines. You can kind of see a pair right there connected to those, and then they sort of go down there behind or under the tank, and then there's another pair of lines under there. But this car is a custom car, and so we decided to just go ahead and run the braided lines all the way down. There's not really any point, because it's not, strictly speaking, like a correct restoration in having those metal lines. So we just went the braided lines all the way down. So there you go. Anyway, so that was one thing he did, is went ahead and plumbed that in. I don't know that there's any show and tell for it. Oh, maybe there is. The other thing he did today is took all of the various dash switches and tested them and cleaned them. And this one in particular, the emergency switch, I think was bad, because he had me order one for it. Same as a Beetle of about the same year. So yeah, this one wasn't any good, but I think he cleaned the rest of the switches, which are probably, I don't know, guys, they're here somewhere. Anyway, and yeah, I think they were all good except that one. Actually, it looks like the wiper one is in there already. I think he might have actually put the headlight one in too. Let's see here. Oh yeah. So that should be yes, that is the headlight switch right there. That's the wiper switch right there. So yeah, it's just the emergency flasher switch, which we're having to replace. But yeah, a couple switches in. I know he did some wiring. You can see the headlight switch is mostly wired in there. That relay right there would be the high-low relay. So again, on these later cars, the high-low is switched via the turn signal stalk versus earlier cars where there's that button on the floor and no relay. It's just everything just runs through the switch. These the switch has teeny tiny skinny wires on it, and it basically just switches the relay. So yeah, wired that in, and I think he did a little bit more wiring here and there. And let's see, what else did he do here? Another thing, huge pain in the butt on Ghia's is he did connect up the actual cable and so on to control these vents. So I think yesterday he had the vents in, and we basically have to like make boots to connect those vents to the tubes in the body. And then yeah, today he actually ran the installed the switch, which is that thing you can see right there. So that's the switch under the dash to switch between fresh air versus the heater. And it's got this metal tube here that's a pain in the butt that runs from the switch over to control the one on that side. And then of course there's another little one coming out here that controls this side. So yeah, just super complicated, guys, compared to a Beetle where, you know, there's no such thing. At least earlier Beetles, they don't have any fresh air system like this. Later Beetles kind of had some fresh air stuff going on, but Ghias, of course, have these huge vents in the front, and again, the purpose of these is to let airflow in should you desire it. But yeah, so that stuff went together today, and I think that is pretty much what he did. He also spent a little bit of time on the other 68. So this one's brother, sister, I don't know. We'll say it's a girl. This one's sister. The other 68 that's in body work right now, this is the one that had extensive rust, as bad or probably worse than this one. And he spent some time with Renee, our paint and body guy, on that one. They had installed a windshield in it the other day to check the opening there. Went in great. So Rafa went ahead and removed that windshield today so they could continue, you know, the body work around there and stuff. Again, I'm talking about the other 68. And yeah, I kind of helped him out a little bit with some of the metal work up front and stuff here, kind of supervising that process to some extent. And yeah, so that was Rafa's day. So let's talk about my day and Jacob's day. So hold on one second. All right, so I will go in more or less chronological order. So for the Baja Bug, which is sitting outside right now, I haven't brought it in for the evening, we're going to go ahead and put armrests on both the passenger and driver door. So normally the earlier cars, that one's a 60, only have a armrest on the passenger side, but it's a Baja Bug. It's kind of a custom car. So we're going to put an armrest also on the driver's side. And so for that, I needed, there's a bracket that supports it that I don't think this car even has one, honestly. But anyway, there's a bracket that supports it. And so we managed to source one of those for the driver's side on the Baja Bug. And it was all rusty, so I sandblasted it, painted it. So that's ready to go. So took care of that for the Baja Bug. And then took some parts for that one to powder coating. This one I had kind of meant to keep the momentum I had on it today, but then Jacob was in and I had sort of told him, or he came in kind of mid-morning, and I told him that we would build the front end of this car together. I wanted him to see how to do that, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So this one I worked on for a while this morning, and mainly you can see the cooler right there. So yesterday I put all the mounting and stuff in for it. So today kind of figured out the plumbing. Haven't plumbed it yet, but it has various fittings in it, which were not necessarily tight, and so on. Likewise, the ones up here for the filter, the fittings on there were just kind of loose, and so kind of went through all those fittings today, got those all sorted out, and then the thermostat, which ultimately will control the fan, turning it off and on when it reaches a certain temperature. Went ahead and assembled that with the ends and the sensor itself, which is this thing here. Kind of figured out roughly where I'm going to put that in line, and yeah, so that was about all I did on this one. And then at that point, around that time, Jacob came in, and so let's talk about what Jacob and I did. So as you can see, this car now has spindles and rotors on it. So there we go. So previously I just had the front torsion arms on here and no spindles. I had previously had the spindle assemblies rebuilt by Brian Roth. The link pins and king pins were all wore out, so he replaced all that. And so today, Jacob and I put both sides together, left and right. I had been through putting a link pin beam together like maybe once with Jacob, but went ahead and went through that again with him on one side, and then he did the other side. I checked, he did a great job. If you haven't done one of these before, they're a little bit, I don't even want to say tricky, but you have to kind of pay attention and you have to know what you're doing. So with link pins, unlike ball joints, there's shims in there that you have to put to account for the basically like tolerances of those arms. And I talked about the offset between the two arms the other day when I was talking about how bad the impy torsion springs were and how they were putting the arms in such a way that they were out of spec for the offset. Anyway, so yeah, you just have to take a bunch of measurements, or well, like one measurement per side. And then the way I do these is take the measurement. There's a chart that tells you how many shims go inner and outer, upper and lower. Go by that, and then usually, well, not usually, always what I do then is I'll dry assemble everything with the number of shims that the chart tells me based on the measurements that I took. And then I'll actually check and make sure that there's not a lot of, I don't even know how to describe this. Like I'll tighten the lower link pin, snug it up, and then the upper link pin, start basically tightening it. It has essentially like a big thread on it, for lack of a better word. I'll start tightening it up. And when I tighten that one up, I don't want to see the link pin carrier like move much, because if it moves much on the top, when the bottom one's tight, that means there's too big of a gap on the top, which in turn means that the number of shims is not correct. So anyway, it's really hard to explain. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, then I don't know, don't lose any sleep over it. But so I always go measure everything, dry fit everything, test it, move the shims around as needed, and then put it together. And so actually this one, we had to add a couple shims, move a couple shims from the outer to the inner on the upper one, which is pretty unusual, because usually at most it would be off like one when you take the measurement. So I think one of the surfaces of one of these trailing arms is probably itself maybe like canted a little bit or something, and that was kind of throwing the measurement off. But again, this is why we dry fit everything and do that little test I described to make sure that nothing is going to be bound up, because if you get the shims wrong, the link pins, which are the ones that go this way and allow the suspension to move, they'll bind up and the suspension will be really stiff, or not even move essentially. And so we want to make sure that when everything goes together, there's the right number of shims, that it's going to allow everything to move very smoothly and stuff. So anyway, I showed Jacob on one side, he did the other side, did a great job. So those went together. And then while he was finishing up the second side, I went ahead and packed the bearings. Well, put in the bearing races in the rotors, packed the bearings, put those in, and then then we installed these. I think I installed a rotor on one side, he installed it on the other, and I showed him how to tighten the nuts there, snug but not too tight, so you don't cook the bearings, etc. So yeah, he's a fast learner. He's picking all this stuff up super fast. So probably the next link pin Beetle we have, I'll just turn him loose on it and maybe just, kind of double check his work while he's doing it. But yeah, quick learner, smart guy. Anyway, so that's together on both sides. And then after that, I went ahead and put on the steering box, put on the steering coupler. I removed some paint from the beam and from the steering box clamp so that we should have a good ground in there for the horn, and got everything nice and lined up, made sure that the steering shaft wasn't going to ground out on the tube right there, because that'll make the horn honk all the time. So yeah, just centering stuff like that. It's not really tedious. It's just something you have to kind of go through and make sure that when the steering box and everything's tightened down, that for example is not rubbing on that tube there, stuff like that. So yeah, that's all in. That's all tightened down. Still need to install the tie rods left and right. Jacob also pulled out, it's dark so you can't really, there we go. Also pulled the stock master cylinder. We have the enormous one similar to the one that's in the orange Ghia over there that'll be going in here, because it of course got a front disc brake upgrade. And so yeah, this one's moving right along. I'm hoping in the next day or so probably to go ahead and get the front of this car back on its wheels and tires. I'll probably go ahead and put a dolly on the back of this car, because I want to move this car out of this space and then go ahead and put the Java Green 67 there so we can start building it. And then this one can move around the shop because it'll have front wheels on it and a dolly on the back. So that's it for today, guys. So pretty productive day in the shop here. Got a lot done on several projects here at least. And by the way, I did talk to AJ at Low Bucket today, and we do have a plan to dyno this motor tomorrow, guys. So make sure you tune in tomorrow, and I'll talk about how that went, and probably do at least like a short video, of this thing on the dyno, and hopefully have some numbers for you guys and stuff like that. So yeah, tomorrow should be fun, dynoing this, see what it does. So for today though, that's it, everyone. Thank you all very much for watching, and we will see you again tomorrow. Bye.